Hello, what you're about to see is the first part of my upcoming project, I guess now current project, Agnès Vardathon, which I'll talk about more once the video properly starts. But I planned on doing this as a feature-length marathon. I'll leave that one in for free. Marathon video. So, obviously I was going to film everything, edit it, and then release it as one kind of big giant video. But there was an unexpected turn of events in starting this thing yesterday, and I want to kind of share it now while it's a bit more current and fresh. And so basically I'll do this whole project in single videos and I'll post them as I go, and then once they're all done I'll compile them all together in feature length form, add an intro to it and make it a bit more flashier and whatnot. So this is kind of just like you're kind of seeing it as it happens. So hopefully this works. So this will be the first part of the Agnès Vardathon. Hope you enjoy, and it might not be that popular. A lot of people might not be interested in this kind of thing, but it's something I'm excited about doing, and hopefully it goes well. But already after the first day of doing this, it's been amazing. Like something really, really, really cool happened, and you're about to hear me talk about it. So there we go. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to Agnès Vardathon, a project in which I want to go through a bunch of films from the French filmmaker Agnès Varda and talk about them in both kind of review form and also just kind of casual vlog style. We'll see where it goes, where it'll take me. I've recently picked up the Blu-ray box set from Artificial Eye, the Agnès Varda collection, which collects at least 8 of her films. I think there's more short films on there as bonus features as well. And she's a filmmaker I discovered a couple of years ago with The Gleaner's an Eye, which I absolutely loved and kind of followed down the rabbit hole of her films on Filmstruck, which is a great streaming service for film fans, and became a big fan of Agnès Varda's work. And this year, it came out last year as well in some countries, was Faces Places, her latest film, a documentary which I absolutely loved. Such a great film. And I really want to do this and kind of dive into more of her filmography and talk about her films, and I'm not sure what format that'll be yet, whether this will be a series of videos or one feature-length video, maybe both, I don't know. But I was really, I'll do it when I got the time to do it. I'll do it when, I've got loads of, days off. It's never going to happen. Today is the day. It is Wednesday, the 11th of July, 2018. The heat wave in the UK seems to be subsiding a little bit, but now that I put the camera on, I feel myself sweating already, but today is the day. I got up this morning, I got my day off today, I'm not working at all, and I looked online and saw that Agnès Varda herself was at the BFI South Bank in London last night giving a 90-minute presentation and talk about her life and her life in movies. By all accounts, it was an incredible night, a lot of people loved it, and I was gutted because I was free yesterday evening and could have feasibly, found a way to get there. It's not too easy to get there, but I could have, I think. I mean, taking out the whole part about whether or not I could have got a ticket at the last minute, it was something that I could have feasibly gone to, so I was gutted. And then I saw that they're screening one of her documentaries, The Beaches of Agnès, tonight at 6 o'clock, and she will be there to do a Q&A. Now, I don't want to go out today, it's my day off. I specifically went to the shop last night to buy anything I'd need for today, because sometimes when I have a day off, I just want to stay in and not do anything. So I really didn't want to go out today, even knowing that it's this event where I'd get to see one of her films on a big screen and hear, her answer some questions, live and in the flesh. I still was like, I don't want to go out today. But I feel like it's one of those cases where I just have to do it. It's like I would regret it so much if I didn't go. So I booked my ticket, and less than 10 minutes after I booked my ticket, the event was sold out, so I think it was meant to be. And I'm really excited to go into London in a few hours to see the film The Beaches of Agnès, which I believe is on the Blu-ray actually. Yes, it is the last film featured, and it came out in 2008, so it's the 10-year anniversary of this film, which I believe was her last film for a very long time actually, until Faces Places. Anyway, I'm excited, I'm looking forward to it, and I don't really have any questions I want to try and put forward when I get there, for the Q&A. I feel like her films kind of answer any questions I'd have about her in a very weird way, without really communicating it directly. She really tells a lot about herself and her ideas and what she thinks about life in her movies, which sounds really wanky, but to me that's what I get out of her films. So I thought, what better way to start this whole Agnès Vardathon off than by cracking into the box set before I go to London tonight and popping in her very first film, which is released in 1955, La Pointe Courte, her directorial debut that follows two different stories, a government inspector's visit and a couple facing the tribulations of a relationship crisis against the backdrop of the titular Mediterranean fishing town. So I'm going to put that disc in now. I'm going to check out La Pointe Courte and give my brief thoughts, because I don't have too much time actually before I need to run out and get a train. Maybe I can kind of review it later on down the line, but I'll give you my brief first reactions to her very first film. And I haven't seen much of her very early work. I've seen mainly her stuff from the 90s and 2000s. So I'm looking forward to diving into this. I'm really looking forward to tonight. It should be a fun experience. Let's get this thing going. Alright, so I'm leaving now for the train and didn't have time to stop and talk about the film properly, La Pointe Courte. But I'll sit down and properly talk about it later on. I'll just say that I enjoyed it, that there were parts of it that were really, really good, but it was a little bit uneven and, dare I say, messy at times. But it is a film that was made over 60 years ago, which is kind of cool, thinking about going to this event right now. But yeah, there's one section of the film that I thought was really, really great. Some stunning cinematography in the film and some really deep writing and performing. But anyway, on with the event tonight, and I don't know how I'll get back to you on that at some point.
Maybe I don't have the exact account, but it's fine. Thank you for your idea.
Okay, it is the afternoon after the evening before. As you can see, I didn't really film anything except for a very brief clip there at the end of the Q&A. And when I got home last night about 10 o'clock, I didn't really feel like setting up the camera and all that and talking. I just wanted to kind of go to sleep. I had a really bad headache because of the movie, which I'll get to in just a second. Wonderful evening, it really was. I'm so glad that I went now. Looking back on it, it's something I can always remember and cherish now that I got to see Agnès in person, you know, literally like a few feet away from me, and to hear her talk so beautifully about her films and her process of filmmaking and things like that. Much like I said yesterday, you know, because I certainly could have asked the question if I wanted to. There was only about 3 or 4 people who put their hands up in the entire room, and I was right at the front row, so I think I probably could have got some attention there. But the thing that was the problem with the Q&A after the film was that Agnès was like taking 5 to 10 minutes to answer each question, including the 3 questions she got given by the moderator of the kind of Q&A panel at the end of the night. So not many questions were kind of answered, but that was fine. And it was exactly as I kind of said yesterday. I don't feel like there's any real questions I could ask her that would give me something that she hasn't really already expanded upon in the films that she's made. I feel like she's so open with herself with the movies that she makes. That's what's so great about them. What's so exciting about them is the way she expresses herself through the images that she puts into her films and things like that. Anyway, so first of all, I want to talk about the film I watched before I went to London to see this film in Q&A, and that was La Pointe Courte, which is released in 1955. Agnès shot it in 1954 in a real place, Pointe Courte, which is a kind of a seaside town that she spent a significant amount of time in when she was a young girl, young teenager, I suppose, and so she wanted to go back and make a film there. And it's split into 2 kind of sections that interlock and interweave with each other, though not very successfully, I don't think. One is just following the goings-on of some of the people in the seaside town, and this idea of the government stepping in and kind of, I don't know, placing laws on what kind of fish you can take and things like that. And it really felt a bit muddled to me. It was a little bit like I didn't fully understand what was going on. There was a thread of a guy who wanted to date the daughter of the father who said, no, I'm not going to have my daughter dating that kind of a guy. And so there was just, it didn't really fit together that well for me. But I will say that section of the film, just the kind of the people, you know, the kind of the fishermen and that kind of stuff, it was shot so beautifully, and it really gave you a sense of a life there. And right at the very beginning, the camera's just kind of going down down this alley, and there's like a wind coming in from, you know, the sea and stuff, and it had such an atmosphere to it that I really, really enjoyed. And there's a scene where, or a part of the scene where the camera moves into a house, and there's a woman there serving kind of food to her kids, and like the food almost drops off the spoon, and she kind of goes, "Ooh," like that, like, "Ooh, I almost met," you know, and it just felt so human and natural, and there was a lot of that to the film. Maybe the acting wasn't the best overall. The second thread and kind of storyline of the film follows a married couple. The man is from the fishing town, and he has never shown his wife, you know, where he grew up, basically. And she wants to leave him. She says to him, you know, we've been together for 4 years, and I just feel like the passion has left our relationship, you know, and she doesn't want to visit this small, boring fishing town. And they spend a few days walking around together, just talking about their relationship, talking about their love and how it's changed and evolved and maybe dissipated over the years. And it's a really, really beautiful film. If you take out all the other stuff, I really felt like this kind of interesting, dissolving and maybe resolving relationship, if that even makes sense. Like, you weren't sure where it was going to go, and really poetic dialogue. And really interestingly, actually, it was such a great decision for me to watch that film before I went to see The Beaches of Agnès, the film that was shown at the BFI. Because in that film, she talks about making La Pointe Courte and how she wrote the dialogue for the scenes between the married couple. Because I believe in the credits of La Pointe Courte, it said that script was by someone else. So I thought, okay, so Agnès didn't write the film. But she says that she wrote the dialogue for those scenes, which makes a lot of sense because there's some really poetic and beautiful stuff about love, about relationships, and about how over time things change. And I love the kind of husband stance of saying, look, I love you. If you really feel like you need to go, then you'll have to go. That's your choice to make. But I'm always going to love you, and even if you feel like the passion is gone, for me it's different, you know. And so I loved how they were kind of working things out together, but at the same time there's an ambiguity to it. There wasn't this sense of, you know, everything's all right by the end and they've got it all figured out now, but it's just a process. And maybe it's good for couples to have that kind of process where they talk about their feelings. At one point he's like, finally we get into the truth, you know, let's just talk about this. Let's just lay it all out on the table, be completely bare and open with our emotions, how we feel about each other and how we feel about our love and where it is now. So that part of the film I thought was phenomenal, but the way it cuts back and forth between the fishermen and all that kind of stuff didn't work overall as a complete film for me, unfortunately. But there is some great cinematography there, even in the fishing town sequences, and also just fun. Like, there's these jousting sequences where you'll have these two boats, and the boats have raised platforms, and there's a jouster with a shield and a pole, and it's really just fun just to watch that kind of stuff and to watch. I mean, it really felt documentary, like the way she captured this fishing town. It was really, really cool, and again, the way she focuses on minutiae at times. There'll be just random shots of cats, you know, just kind of curling up in the sun, and I just loved all that stuff. The little beats, the little kind of, the small things that other filmmakers wouldn't even dream of including in their film are the things that Agnès is quite interested in putting in the film. So for me, it was a great kind of insight into where her strengths would go on to be utilized in a better way in the future. You could really tell she had an eye for a pleasing image. And even with the couple scenes, there's kind of an abstract feeling to the editing. I'm not sure if that was intentional, where the couple is kind of in different places at different times, and it's kind of playing around with time. Well, not with time, but with kind of a present, you know, second to second. Like, they'll be having a conversation, you know, and then they continue the conversation, and suddenly they're sitting somewhere else, you know. So you get the feeling that they've been talking about this for quite a while. And so I just love how she kind of jumped in every now and again, and suddenly, like, he'd be looking at her from a different angle. I don't know, I just like that stuff, whether it was intentional or not. And so, yeah, the film looked great, I thought, and is an impressive debut. But knowing who she is now and having enjoyed her films from much later on in her career, it's impossible for me to not take that into account and enjoy this film more because of that. Knowing it's her first film adds to the experience for me. But as an overall film, I don't think it works as well as I wish it would. But there's a lot to like, and it's definitely a film to go back to. And it looked great as well. So that's my thoughts on La Pointe Courte. So now I'm going to take a little bit of a break and then talk about the evening last night and what I thought of the film, The Beaches of Agnès, and what the Q&A was like. Okay, so the Q&A and the film The Beaches of Agnès, which is a documentary that she made in 2006 and 7 and was released in 2008, is a documentary about her life as viewed through the lenses of the many beaches she's been to throughout her life, and also as she was approaching her 80th birthday. I'd never seen it before, and I found her work through the film The Gleaners and I, which came out, I believe, in 2000, and that to me was this kind of, wow, like this is such a great way to make a documentary where you're focusing on a particular subject, you're interviewing people, you're learning more about this subject, you're giving the viewer a broader sense of scope about this particular subject, which in the film was gleaning and the history of gleaning and stuff like that. But then she kind of will just throw in these random asides of her personally as she's making the film. It's not just about the subject, it's about the person who's making the film as well. And so she brings you into her own world, her own life, and I thought that was phenomenal. And that's what she's continued to do and had been doing previously as well in other documentaries before The Gleaners and I. And that's when I really became kind of captivated by her films. So The Beaches of Agnès was one I hadn't seen, was really looking forward to because I knew it was really all about her. So now it's kind of free reign to fully focus on her life and everything that she's done in both her family, her home life, but also her professional life and filmmaking and photography and all that kind of stuff. And it didn't disappoint. So I went to the BFI and got into the room. It was a nice big kind of screening room and there's a lot of people there. I think it was packed, actually it was sold out. I think I mentioned that yesterday where I bought my ticket and then it was sold out within 10 minutes, so I was very lucky to get in, and I really feel like it was meant to be. I went straight to the front row because I wanted to kind of see Agnès as clearly as possible when she came out to do the Q&A and stuff, and it just so happened where I was sitting on the right hand side of the screening room was right where the door was where she came in, so I got to kind of see her before everyone else, which was really cool. But also that kind of played negatively into my viewing of the film. Before we get to the film, Agnès came out on stage and did a brief kind of introduction and things like that. And there's a picture of her on the screen that was there before the film started, where she's surrounded by all these brooms. And she told the story. She's like, I need to tell you the story behind this picture. She says, in France we have this kind of slang word, which is like related to the word broom for people who are really old. Like, oh, you're 35 years broom old or something to that effect. So she said when she turned 80, everyone brought her 80 different brooms, so that's what the picture was for. And she was very funny, very witty, and you kind of marvel at someone who's 90 years old and it has to be said, has seemingly so much of her faculties about her and still has so much to say about art and life and just is very kind of on the ball and witty. And at times she struggled with kind of finding the right word in English, which is kind of endearing in a funny way. And so the kind of short introduction was a great thing. And so she left and the film started, but she was kind of lingering by the door. And I could tell, like, the ushers or whatever, they were trying to get her out of the screening room. But she was like, I think she was like, I just want to see the beginning, I'm not quite sure what that was all about, whether or not she just wanted to see, maybe the film start, see if we'd laugh at something or anything like that. But she eventually left after that. And she also said, which was really funny, that, her hearing's not as good anymore. She's 90 years old, and her eyesight is really bad now. She says, you're all out of focus, but you look great. So it was just, anytime she was on stage last night and speaking, everyone just had a smile on their face, were laughing. It was just such a good, warm, awesome time. I loved it. But the film itself, The Beaches of Agnès, I loved it, but because I was sat right at the front and on the right-hand side, I had to look up and to the left. And so if you just do that and look up to the left, it's quite uncomfortable if you do it for like a minute or two. Try 2 hours, luckily it didn't affect me during the film. Like, I kept having to kind of like twist my neck, which was fine. I kind of loosened it up and then continue watching. But as soon as the event was finished, I got hit with one of the most severe headaches I've ever had in my entire life. It was unbearable, but I'm just glad it didn't happen halfway through the film. Anyway, the film was wonderful, and I think what I'm going to do actually with The Beaches of Agnès, because it's in the Blu-ray box set, and I was planning to watch it as the last film of this whole thing. I wasn't planning yesterday at all, and that's what I love about this, that this started in such an unexpected way. I love that about this. It feels so perfect for kind of her work in general, just to be so spontaneous, Very briefly, I loved it, very personal, very intimate, like most of her documentaries that I've seen have been. And I loved how she used clips from her other films. It's kind of like it's like a retrospective of her career, but also her life, and just all these little wonderful flights of fancy that she puts in, and just these, like, you know, she goes onto a beach and gets all these different mirrors and just puts mirrors around, you know, and it's just like, you know, why not, you know? And it's just really cool, like seeing the waves like on like a rectangle of mirror, but then there's other mirrors behind that. And then she says, oh, you know, the people who helped me with the mirrors on this day are going to have visual credits. So she just holds a mirror up to their face and says, hey, say hello, you know, instead of crediting them on screen. Just lots of random little bits that she throws in for seemingly no reason. And in the Q&A, she would say that, you know, oftentimes in my films I put things in there that they're not necessary. They don't need to be there. You know, they don't mean anything. But I just like to include them. They're just little side stories, I think she called them. You know, just these digressions that just, and again, like in the film, she'll say, oh, here's a digression, you know, and she'll just talk about something else. Okay, end of digression, you know. And really funny at times that people were howling at this one particular scene where Agnès goes back to her childhood home. And I loved how she's like, okay, here's the childhood home sequence where I go back to where the beginning of my life was. And it didn't really, nothing was really came out of it that profound or anything. She just said, yeah, I recognize it. It's just, there's no emotion here anymore. And she walks away from the house saying, oh, well, the childhood home sequence was a flop, you know. But the real funny part is when she meets the people who are living in the house that she grew up in. And there's a guy who owns all these trains, these miniature trains, and like really expensive ones. Like, yeah, this is my 35,000 franc train. And you look at it, it's just a little train. You know, and everyone in the cinema just started laughing about how ridiculous this guy was with this ridiculously expensive miniature train collection. And Agnès says to his wife, like, he could buy you some diamonds with all the money from this. And he's like, well, it's, you know, we call each other, what did he say? There's a word he used. Like, the people who collect these trains, it was like a trainopath or something like that. And he's also like, yeah, the whole thing's worth about 3 million francs. And just the ridiculousness of him having all these I don't know, maybe it was just like that one screening room last night where everyone just found it so funny that everyone was just bursting out laughing at this guy. It was really funny. And there was lots of funny moments, but there was also some sad and poignant moments where she's talking about her husband and how he passed away, and the film she made about his childhood. I mean, there's a lot to kind of talk about with this film because there's a lot that's thrown in there. It's almost 2 hours long. It's very dense. Again, she has known so many people, has made so many films, has so many family members. You know, there's so many little bits and pieces to this film that I feel like it's kind of hard to review it and kind of talk about it in any detail without just kind of just listing off random moments. But I think it really comes together to create a really profound portrait of someone's life. And you know, the idea of, and she said before the film that she felt like, okay, I'm approaching 80. That's a bit scary. So I want to do something to mark it and have this film ready by the time I'm 80 years old. And she said, I'm now 90, but that doesn't seem so bad now compared to 80s. It's a bit different, you know. And she said, you always remember those kind of round number birthdays. You know, people remember when you're 20, when you're 30. And I was thinking, yeah, I turned 30, you know, a week or two ago, and I was thinking about that. And I'll probably always kind of think about that time period as well. Anyway, right, so The Beaches of Agnès, actually, one thing I should say is her name, Agnès Varda, right? That should be how you pronounce it. And I always thought, you know, from the get-go, Agnès Varda, right? That's her name. But I've seen quite a few of her films now, and whenever her name is said in a documentary, someone's calling her, it's Agnès, you know? So I like to try and pronounce names as best as I possibly can to how you're supposed to pronounce them. I'm not going to try and do an accent or anything like that, but I like to kind of get close if I can to kind of how it's supposed to be pronounced. And sometimes it doesn't matter, you know, and sometimes I get it wrong, but I like to kind of try. So that's why, again, welcome to Agnès Vardathon, not Agnès Vardathon. But it really doesn't matter either way, and I'm sure she wouldn't care anyway. But on stage, the people introducing her were saying Agnès Varda. So I'm like, oh, maybe I got it wrong all those years. But then the film started and everyone's calling her Agnès. You know? So I was like, okay, I guess I'll just stick with Agnès. But I loved that her real name is something I never knew about. That Agnès was the name she chose for herself when she was 18 years old and had it, you know, officially changed. And so she writes out her birth name in the sand, and then the waves wash it out. It's a very simple, maybe even cheesy idea, but the way she does it is so earnest. And you know how she talks in the film about we're kind of walking backwards through my life, and there'll be these random little moments where she's just kind of walking backwards, literally, and cross-fading all these images. Like it's childlike. It has a childlike sense of fun to it that I really, really enjoy. Only one moment I didn't like, and that was just when she was talking about her love with her husband, and there was a shot of, you know, two actors who are supposed to be her and her husband with bags over their heads, completely naked, walking backwards until you can see everything, and the guy's got a massive erection, and I'm just not quite sure that needed to be in there, but hey, it is what it is, right? So afterwards she came out and kind of talked with the moderator, who gave her 10 kind of small brushes to kind of signify 10 brooms to mark the 10 years of the film, The Beaches of Agnès. And I think she took it more as, oh, so you're saying I'm you know, I need these because I'm 90 now. And the moderator was like, no, it's, you know, 10 brooms for the film. But she took it very much as, this means that I'm 90 now, and you're kind of reminding me of how even older I am, which is very funny. And another thing that happened was a guy got up like towards the middle of the Q&A, and he's going, excuse me, I've got another screening booked for Agnès Varda at 9 o'clock. And the security had to come in and escort him out, and it's like, dude, what are you doing? She's on the stage talking. Are you that bothered about, you know, time running over so you don't get to see the next film? Like, and even Agnès was like, should I stop talking? Like, you know, do you want me to leave? So that was kind of really weird and a little bit uncomfortable. But, you know, sometimes people are like that, I suppose. I had a great time. It was so great to see her in person and to hear kind of, you know, just her talking about films and about life and telling stories, going on digressions. I could have sat there and listened to her talk for hours, I think. It was just so cool. And then she left, and I was just trying to get out because there was such a kind of a movement to get out of the screening room. It was all kind of like backed up and stuff. So I kind of was trying to get out the side door. And the guy's like, no, wait, you know, you can't go through here. And then he said, okay, just a couple of people. So we walked through, and there she was, and there was people kind of like just swarming around her, maybe like 5, 6, 7 people, and they were getting stuff signed. And I brought my booklet for the Agnès Varda box set that I showed earlier. And I thought, you know, just in case I could get it signed. Who knows? It's not something I was really that, you know, set on or anything, but just in case. So I thought, hey, just in case, here I am, right? So I walked up, tried to push my way in, and there was a guy who had a marker. I was like, can I borrow your marker? So I had a blank marker. I had the booklet ready in my hand, and she was literally like 2 feet away from me. So I was about 2 or 3 people behind the very small queue. Most people were just walking past. And then she turned around and left, and so I didn't get a chance to get it signed. So I went and gave the guy his marker back, and he'd had, I guess, a DVD sleeve signed or something, and he was shaking like a leaf. And I just thought, you know what? I think he's going to treasure that a lot more than I was. And it would have been cool, but I think just having the ticket stub here that says I went to the Q&A and stuff, I'll pop that in the box set. That'll be my memento. I'm not too fussed about an autograph. Would have been a nice little extra added bonus, but to kind of be there and hear her kind of talk about the film and her films and everything was just something I'm never going to forget. So it was absolutely fantastic, and this is the first part of the Agnès Vardathon, and I couldn't be happier that it happened and I went, and it was just so cool. And I'll probably talk about it more if I remember other little things, but for now, that's that for this part of the Agnès Vardathon, and I'm not sure how I'm going to present it at this point, but right now I'm really happy and can't wait to continue dive into more of her films and yeah, just keep on rolling basically. But it's going to be hard to top that last night for an experience with one of her films. Seeing it on a big screen was fantastic too. So there we go. That's that part. This part.